The mop bucket wheeled across the marble floor with a squeak that echoed through the empty executive suite. It was 6 a.m., and I was cleaning my uncle's corner office at Meridian Financial Group, the same office where, in exactly 3 hours, he'd fire another employee for underperformance. I sprayed glass cleaner on the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago and watched the city wake up. From up here, the view was worth millions. The office was worth millions. The entire company was worth $340 million, actually, and I owned 51% of it. My Uncle Harrison had no idea. Nobody did. To everyone at Meridian Financial, I was just Thea, the night shift cleaner who'd worked here for 8 months. Quiet, invisible, perpetually in a gray uniform with a name tag that said maintenance staff. Harrison breezed past me most mornings without a glance. Sometimes he'd leave a mess on his desk deliberately, coffee rings and crumpled papers, like he was testing whether I'd clean it properly. "The help is getting sloppy," he'd complained to his assistant last week, not realizing I was restocking supplies in the next room. "The cleaner missed spots on my windows. We're paying for quality, not mediocrity." The help, the cleaner, never my name. This morning, I found a note on his desk. "Board meeting today, 2 p.m. Vote on executive compensation package. Final decision on my salary increase." I smiled, folding the note carefully and placing it back exactly where he'd left it. If only Harrison knew that the help would be sitting across from him in that board meeting. If only he knew that his salary increase depended on approval from the cleaner he'd just called mediocre. Let me back up 10 years to when I was 18, and my father died. Dad was Harrison's younger brother, and they'd been business partners. Together, they'd founded Meridian Financial, a wealth management firm that grew from a 2-person operation to a company managing $2.3 billion in client assets. Dad was the financial genius. Harrison was the relationship guy. They were perfect complements, building something extraordinary. Then Dad got sick, pancreatic cancer. He was dead within 8 months. I was 18, starting college, devastated. Dad had been my best friend, my mentor, the person who taught me everything about finance and investing. "Take care of Harrison," Dad had told me before he died. "He's not good with numbers. He needs you." "I'm 18, Dad. I don't know anything about running a company." "You know more than you think. I've been teaching you since you were 12. Those Saturday mornings in my office, you were learning the business." He'd smiled weakly. "Harrison doesn't know this yet, but I'm leaving you my 51% stake in Meridian. He gets 49%. The company stays in the family, but you have controlling interest." "Why?" "Because you understand the business. Harrison understands people, but he doesn't understand finance. Without me, he'll make mistakes. Big ones. You'll need to guide him. He'll never listen to an 18-year-old. Then don't tell him you're 18. Don't tell him anything until you're ready." Dad had set up a trust structure. My ownership would be managed by trustees, a law firm Dad had worked with for years. They'd vote my shares according to my instructions, but my name wouldn't appear on any public documents. Harrison would know his brother's shares went into a trust. He wouldn't know I controlled that trust. "When do I tell him?" I'd asked. "When he needs to hear it. You'll know when." After Dad died, I went to college as planned. I majored in finance, following in Dad's footsteps. I spent summers interning at investment firms, learning the industry from the inside. Harrison ran Meridian alone. At first, he was cautious, running the company the way Dad had taught him, but gradually things changed. He started taking bigger risks, making flashier investments, hiring expensive staff, moving the office to a prestigious building, buying himself a luxury car and billing it to the company. "Your father was too conservative," I heard him tell a client once. "I'm taking Meridian to the next level." The next level meant higher fees, aggressive sales tactics, and investment strategies that prioritized commissions over client outcomes. I watched from a distance, getting quarterly reports from the trustees. The company was growing in revenue, but becoming ethically questionable. "Should we intervene?" the senior trustee asked me during a check-in. "Not yet. Let's see how far he goes. He's making decisions your father never would have approved. I know, but he hasn't crossed into illegal territory yet, just questionable. When is your line? When he hurts clients or employees. That's when I step in. I graduated college at 22 with honors. I could have walked into Meridian's executive suite and claimed my ownership stake, could have forced Harrison to acknowledge me as the majority shareholder. Instead, I applied for a job in the company's operations department, entry-level analyst. No mention of my connection to the founder or my ownership stake. I wanted to see the company from the inside, understand what Harrison had built in the 8 years since Dad died. I lasted 3 months as an analyst before Harrison fired me. "You're not a culture fit," his HR director told me. "Harrison feels you question decisions too much." I'd questioned a proposed investment strategy that would have generated huge fees but terrible returns for clients. I'd questioned an expense report where Harrison had billed a vacation as a business trip. I'd questioned things because they were wrong, and Harrison didn't like being questioned. "That's fine," I told HR. "I'll find something else." "We'll provide a reference, of course. You're competent, just not right for Meridian's dynamic culture." Dynamic culture. Code for we do questionable things and don't want employees who notice. I left with 3 months of severance and a clearer understanding of what Harrison had become: arrogant, entitled, and convinced his success was entirely self-generated. He'd forgotten that Dad built the foundation, that the client relationships, the investment philosophy, the reputation for integrity, all of that came from Dad. Harrison thought he'd built Meridian, he'd inherited it. Over the next 5 years, I worked at various financial firms, building my own expertise and reputation. I watched Meridian from a distance, getting quarterly updates from the trustees. The company continued growing. Revenue hit $85 million annually. Staff expanded to 140 people. Harrison's salary increased to $2.3 million a year, but employee turnover was terrible. Glassdoor reviews were scathing. Client complaints were rising. "He's running it into the ground," the senior trustee told me. "Slowly, but inevitably, the growth is masking serious problems." What kind of problems? Cultural problems, fear-based management, ethical corner-cutting. It's not illegal, but it's ugly. Employees are miserable. Clients are starting to notice. How much longer until it becomes critical? 2, maybe 3 years. Then the reputation damage will be irreversible. I was 27. I'd been waiting 9 years since Dad died, building my expertise, watching Harrison destroy what Dad had built. It was almost time. But first, I needed to understand the company from the bottom up, not as an analyst who lasted 3 months, but as someone truly invisible. I applied for a position in the facilities department, night shift cleaner, different name on the application, my mother's maiden name, Thea Morrison, instead of Thea Walsh. The facilities manager didn't connect me to the analyst Harrison had fired 5 years earlier. Why would he? I was applying for a minimum wage cleaning position. "You're overqualified," he said, looking at my resume. "You have a finance degree from Northwestern." "I'm going back to school for my master's. I need a flexible night job. Cleaning fits my schedule." It was partially true. I was enrolled in an MBA program. I just didn't need the money. "All right, welcome to Meridian. You'll be cleaning the executive floor, working 5 a.m. to 1 p.m., Monday through Friday." Perfect. I'd have access to every office, every filing cabinet, every confidential document left out on desks after executives went home. For 8 months, I cleaned, mopped floors, emptied trash, wiped down conference tables, and observed everything. I saw Harrison berate assistants for tiny mistakes, watched him take credit for other people's work, listened to him on calls with clients, making promises he knew the firm couldn't keep. I saw expense reports for client dinners that were actually personal nights out, company credit cards used for family vacations, bonuses to executives while support staff got minimal raises. Nothing illegal, just ethically repugnant. The employees who noticed me at all were kind. "Morning, Thea," the analysts would say, sometimes stopping to chat. "How long have you worked here?" one asked. 8 months. "You like it?" "It's fine. Quiet. I can think while I work." "Must be nice. This place is chaos during normal hours." "I've heard. Harrison seems intense." The analyst looked around nervously. "That's an understatement. He's not a good person. Great businessman, I guess. Terrible human being." "Why do you stay?" "The money. And fear of being blacklisted. Harrison has connections everywhere in Chicago, finance. If you leave on bad terms, you're done in this city." This was the culture Dad would have hated, fear-based loyalty. Financial success masking ethical decay. The opportunity I'd been waiting for came on a Tuesday morning. I was cleaning Harrison's office when I found a memo on his desk. Proposed restructuring plan. Eliminate underperforming divisions, reduce headcount by 40%, redirect resources to high-margin clients only. 40%. He was planning to fire 56 people. I kept reading. The underperforming divisions included the client service team, the one that handled smaller accounts, the team that helped middle-class families invest for retirement, save for college, plan for their futures. Dad had loved those clients. "They need us most," he'd always said. "The wealthy have options. Middle-class families need good advice and fair fees." Harrison was eliminating them because they weren't profitable enough. The memo included another detail. Recommend board approval for CEO compensation increase to $3.8 million annually, reflecting company growth and leadership. He was firing 56 people and giving himself a $1.5 million raise. I photographed the memo with my phone, replaced it exactly as I'd found it, and finished cleaning. At noon, I left Meridian's building, changed clothes in my car, and drove to the law firm that managed my trust. "I need to call a board meeting," I told the senior trustee. "This week, if possible." "What's happened?" "Harrison's about to destroy what my father built. It's time." The trustee reviewed the memo I'd photographed. "This is egregious. But Thea, revealing your ownership now will be dramatic. Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 9 years." "Let's do this." The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. Harrison had requested it himself to approve his restructuring plan and compensation increase. The board consisted of 5 members: Harrison, 2 external directors Harrison had appointed, and 2 seats controlled by the trust, representing my father's shares. Harrison thought the trust votes were handled by elderly trustees who rubber-stamped his decisions. He'd never bothered to find out who actually controlled those votes. Thursday morning, I arrived for my cleaning shift as usual. Gray uniform, name tag, mop bucket. I cleaned Harrison's office while he sat at his desk, typing furiously on his laptop. "Coffee spilled under the side table," he said without looking up. "Make sure you get it." "Of course, Mr. Walsh." He didn't even glance at me. I was furniture to him, invisible help. I cleaned the coffee, finished the office, and left at 1 p.m. as usual. At 1:30 p.m. I returned to the building, but not through the service entrance, through the front doors. I wore a tailored navy suit, my hair styled, carrying a leather portfolio. I looked like every other executive entering Meridian's lobby. The receptionist didn't recognize me. Why would she? She'd never actually seen me. Cleaners were invisible. "I'm here for the 2 p.m. board meeting. Thea Walsh." She checked her list, confused. "I don't have you listed." "Check again. I'm representing the Walsh Family Trust." She made a call. "Mr. Walsh, there's a Thea Walsh here claiming to be on the board." I could hear Harrison's voice through the phone, annoyed. "I don't know any Thea Walsh. Tell her she's at the wrong company." "Actually," I said, taking the phone from the receptionist, "I'm at exactly the right company. I'm your niece, and I control 51% of Meridian Financial. See you in the boardroom, Uncle Harrison." I hung up. The boardroom was on the executive floor I'd been cleaning for 8 months. I walked in at 1:55 p.m., 5 minutes early. The 2 external directors were already seated. Harrison wasn't there yet. "You must be Ms. Walsh," one director said. "We received notice this morning that you'd be attending in place of the trustee representatives." "That's correct. I'm the beneficial owner of the trust." "We weren't aware the trust was controlled by family." "Most people aren't aware. That was intentional." Harrison entered at exactly 2:00 p.m., saw me sitting in one of the trust seats, and stopped. "What are you doing here?" "Attending a board meeting. I'm a director representing 51% ownership." "You're not a director. You're nobody. You're—" He stopped, something clicking in his mind. "Wait, you're the analyst I fired 5 years ago." "I am." "And you're claiming to own 51% of my company?" "Not your company. Our company. Dad left his 51% stake to me when I was 18. I've controlled it ever since through the trust structure. The trustees vote according to my instructions." Harrison's face went from red to purple. "That's impossible." "It's documented. Here." I slid copies of the trust documents, the share transfer agreements, and Dad's will across the table. The external directors read carefully. One whistled softly. "This is legitimate. She's the majority shareholder." Harrison grabbed the papers. "My brother wouldn't have left the company to an 18-year-old. He would have left it to me. He left you 49%. He left me 51%. Because he knew I understood the business and you understood relationships. He wanted us to work together." "We're not working together. You infiltrated my company under false pretenses." "Your company?" "Let's be clear, Harrison. This has never been your company. It was Dad's company. Now it's my company. You're a minority shareholder and an employee. A well-paid employee, but an employee nonetheless." The external directors looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should adjourn and reschedule once everyone has processed this information." "No," I said firmly. "We're here to vote on Harrison's proposals. Let's proceed." Harrison was still standing, gripping the back of his chair. "You can't do this." "I'm the majority shareholder. I absolutely can do this. Sit down, Harrison." He sat, looking like he wanted to murder me. "Let's review the restructuring proposal," I continued, pulling out the memo I'd found on his desk. "Harrison wants to eliminate client service for middle-class accounts, fire 56 people, and redirect resources to high-net-worth clients exclusively." "That's a sound business decision," Harrison said. "Low-margin clients aren't worth servicing." "They were worth serving to Dad. He built this company helping people who needed good financial advice and fair fees." "Your father was too idealistic. I've made this company profitable." "You've made it profitable by abandoning his values, by treating employees like disposable resources, by extracting maximum fees from clients rather than serving their interests. That's business. That's not the business Dad built, and it's not the business I'm going to allow going forward." I turned to the external directors. "I'm voting against the restructuring plan. As majority shareholder, my vote determines the outcome. The plan is rejected." Harrison stood again. "You can't." "I can, and I am. Sit down." "Let's move to the compensation proposal," I continued. Harrison wants to increase his salary from $2.3 million to $3.8 million while firing 56 people. "I've earned that increase," Harrison shouted. "I've grown this company." "You've grown revenue while destroying culture. Employee turnover is 43% annually. Client satisfaction scores have dropped 18 points since Dad died. You've built financial success on a foundation of fear and ethical compromise. This is a coup. You're trying to steal the company I built. I'm not stealing anything. I'm exercising my rights as majority owner. And here's what's going to happen." I pulled out a document I'd prepared. "Effective immediately, I'm implementing the following changes. First, the restructuring plan is canceled. No layoffs. Client service for all account sizes continues. Second, Harrison's compensation remains at current levels. No increase. Third, I'm establishing an employee advisory committee. Staff will have formal input on company decisions. Fourth, we're returning to Dad's original fee structure. Lower fees, client-first philosophy. Fifth, I'm joining the company full-time as Chief Strategy Officer, reporting directly to the board. Harrison was shaking with rage. You're destroying everything I've built. I'm saving what Dad built, what you've been slowly destroying. The other shareholders will revolt. The employees will... The employees will celebrate. I've been working here for 8 months, Harrison. I've talked to them. I've heard how you treat them. They're terrified of you and they hate working here. This will be a relief. Working here? What are you talking about? I smiled. I've been the night shift cleaner for 8 months, the one who cleaned your office every morning while you sat at your desk ignoring me, the one you called the help and complained about for missing spots on windows. The realization spread across his face. You're the cleaner? I was. As of today, I'm Chief Strategy Officer and majority shareholder. Any questions? Harrison's face went through several emotions: shock, humiliation, rage, and finally something like fear. You've been spying on me. I've been observing the company I own. There's a difference? Everything I said, everything I did, I saw it all. Every berating of assistants, every expense report for personal items, every client promise you knew you couldn't keep. I documented all of it. That's illegal. It's not. I'm the owner. I have every right to observe operations. The external directors were trying to remain neutral, but I could see they were impressed. Ms. Walsh, one said carefully, these are significant operational changes. Do you have experience implementing such reforms? I have a finance degree from Northwestern and an MBA in progress. I've worked at 3 other financial firms in various capacities. I spent 3 months here as an analyst before Harrison fired me for questioning unethical practices, and I've spent the past 8 months observing every aspect of operations from the inside. I'm qualified. You were the analyst I fired? Harrison asked. 5 years ago? I was. I questioned an investment strategy that would have generated fees at client expense. You didn't like being questioned. So this is revenge. You've been planning this for years. This is not revenge. This is stewardship. Dad left me controlling interest because he knew you'd need guidance. He was right. I stood, gathering my documents. The votes are recorded. Restructuring plan? Rejected. Compensation increase? Rejected. New operational policies? Approved by majority ownership. Meeting adjourned. You can't just take over like this, Harrison shouted. I'm not taking over. I've owned 51% for 9 years. I'm just finally exercising that ownership. I'll fight this. I'll sue. You'll lose. The documentation is airtight. The shares are mine legally. You can accept it and work with me, or you can resign. Your choice. I walked out of the boardroom, leaving Harrison sputtering with rage and the external directors looking shell-shocked. In the hallway, I passed several employees who'd heard raised voices from the boardroom. Everything okay, Ms. Walsh? One analyst asked, someone who'd been kind to me during my cleaning shifts. Everything's fine. There are going to be some changes around here. Good changes. You were serious about being the owner? Completely serious, and effective immediately. We're implementing new policies, better treatment of employees, return to ethical client service, an end to fear-based management. Is Harrison being fired? That's up to him. If he can work within the new structure, he stays. If he can't, he'll resign. Word spread through the office within an hour. By 5 p.m., nearly every employee knew that the night shift cleaner was actually the majority owner, and Harrison's reign of fear was over. Harrison didn't resign. Instead, he retreated to his office and refused to speak to anyone for 3 days. On Monday, he called me. We need to talk. We met in a conference room, just the two of us. I don't understand why your father did this, Harrison said. He looked older than his 58 years, exhausted. He did it because he knew you'd struggle without him. He wanted me to have the authority to guide the company when you made mistakes. So I've been on probation for 9 years without knowing it. Not probation. Partnership. If you'd run the company well, I would have stayed silent indefinitely. But you didn't. I grew revenue by 340% since your father died. You did, but you sacrificed culture, ethics, and employee welfare to do it. Dad would never have accepted that trade-off. Harrison was quiet. I thought I was building something great. You were building something profitable. That's not the same as great. So what happens now? You're in charge and I'm… What? Your employee? We're partners. I have controlling interest, yes. But you have institutional knowledge, client relationships, and experience. I need those things. What I don't need is the arrogance, the fear-based management, and the ethical compromises. You're asking me to change everything about how I run this company. I'm asking you to remember what Dad taught you: client service over profit extraction, employee development over fear-based compliance, long-term reputation over short-term gains. And if I can't, then you resign with a generous severance package, and I find someone who can. Harrison looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. I loved your father. He was my best friend, my partner, everything. When he died, I felt like I had to prove I could do it without him, build something bigger, better, more successful. You proved you could build something bigger, but not better. No, not better. Over the next 6 months, Meridian transformed. We rolled back the aggressive fee structures, implemented the Employee Advisory Committee, and established an ethics review process for all client recommendations. Employee turnover dropped from 43% to 11%. Client satisfaction scores increased by 27 points. Revenue dipped slightly, but profitability remained strong. Harrison struggled with the changes. He was used to unilateral decision-making and didn't like being questioned, but gradually, he adapted. You were right, he told me one afternoon. About the culture. I'd built something toxic. You built something profitable and toxic. Now we're building something profitable and healthy. Do the employees know about you being the cleaner? Some figured it out. I haven't announced it formally. Why not? You could embarrass me publicly. God knows I deserve it. That's not the goal. The goal is to run a good company. Your humiliation doesn't serve that. He nodded slowly. Your father would be proud of you. I hope so. I'm not proud of how I treated you. The analyst I fired, the cleaner I ignored. I was an arrogant ass. Yes, you were. Can you forgive me? I can work with you professionally. Forgiveness takes longer. Fair enough. 1 year after the board meeting, I decided to address the company. I called an all-staff meeting, something Harrison had never done. Many of you know me as Thea Walsh, Chief Strategy Officer. Some of you remember me from 5 years ago when I worked briefly as an analyst. And some of you knew me as the night shift cleaner. The room buzzed with whispers. I want to explain why I took such an unusual path. My father, Thomas Walsh, co-founded this company with Harrison. When Dad died, he left me controlling ownership. I was 18. I wasn't ready to run a company. So I waited. I learned. I watched. 5 years ago, I came here as an analyst. I saw problems, ethical corners being cut, employees being mistreated. I raised concerns and was fired for not being a culture fit. Several people laughed nervously. 8 months ago, I came back as a cleaner. I wanted to see the company from the perspective of people who are usually invisible. What I saw concerned me deeply. A culture of fear, employees afraid to question decisions, ethical compromises becoming normalized. So I exercised my rights as majority owner. I changed the leadership structure. I implemented new policies, and I'm here to tell you why. My father built Meridian on 3 principles: serve clients honestly, treat employees with respect, and build something sustainable rather than something flashy. Under Harrison's sole leadership, we drifted from those principles. I'm not here to punish Harrison. I'm here to return this company to what it was meant to be. A place where ethical client service matters more than maximum fees, where employees are developed, not dominated, where long-term reputation matters more than short-term gains. Some of you are wondering why I cleaned toilets for 8 months when I could have just announced my ownership and implemented changes. The answer is simple. I needed to understand the real company, not the one executives see. The cleaner sees what executives miss: the complaints in empty offices, the stress in exhausted faces, the small cruelties that happen when people think no one's watching. That perspective made me a better leader. And it taught me something important. Every person in this company matters. From the CEO to the night shift cleaner, everyone contributes to what we build. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire company was applauding. After the meeting, dozens of employees approached me. Some thanked me. Some apologized for not realizing who I was. Some just wanted to shake my hand. "You cleaned my office for months," one analyst said. "We talked sometimes. You asked about my work. I had no idea you were the owner." I wasn't asking as the owner. I was asking as someone who cared. That's the difference between you and Harrison. You actually care. Harrison cares. He just expresses it poorly. Harrison himself was standing in the corner, watching the interactions. When the crowd cleared, he approached. "That was generous," he said. "You could have thrown me under the bus. Instead, you focused on the company. Humiliating you doesn't serve anyone. Still, thank you." We stood in awkward silence. "I've been thinking," Harrison said, "about stepping down, making you CEO officially." "Why?" "Because you're better at this than I am. You understand people. You understand ethics. You understand what your father was trying to build." I understand those things because I'm 28 with something to prove. You understand clients, relationships, and business development. We need both. So I stay. You stay. But as a partner, not a dictator. I can live with that. 2 years after the board meeting, Meridian had been completely transformed. Revenue was up 23%, employee satisfaction scores were the highest in the industry, and client retention had improved dramatically. We'd been named one of Chicago's best places to work and received an ethics award from the Financial Planning Association. "Your father would be proud," the senior trustee told me during our annual review. "You've honored his vision while building something sustainable." It took 9 years to get here. Good things take time? Harrison and I had settled into a productive partnership. He handled client relationships and business development. I handled strategy, operations, and culture. We met weekly to align on decisions. "I'm thinking about retirement," Harrison said during one meeting. "Not immediately, but in the next 5 years. You're 59. You have years left. I have years left, but I don't have the energy I once had, and honestly, I don't want to be here forever. I want to travel, spend time with family, enjoy life." What would retirement look like? I'd remain on the board, be available for key client relationships, but day-to-day operations would be yours. And your shares? That's the question. I have 49%. You have 51%. If I sell to you, you'd own 100%. We could keep the current structure, or I could sell to employees, create an employee ownership plan, give the staff equity in what they're building. I considered that. Dad would have loved that idea. He would. What do you think? I think it aligns with the culture we're building. Shared ownership, shared success. We spent a year developing the employee ownership plan. When we announced it, the staff response was overwhelming. "We're going to own the company?" one analyst asked. "Partially. Harrison is selling 25% of his stake to an employee stock ownership plan. Over time, staff will build meaningful equity." "Why would you do this?" "Because it's the right thing to do. You build this company every day. You should benefit from that work." The ESOP launched 6 months later. Employees who'd been with the company for more than a year received initial allocations. New employees would vest over time. 3 years after the board meeting, I was running Meridian day to day while Harrison transitioned to advisory status. The company had doubled in size, managed $4.8 billion in assets, and employed 210 people. More importantly, we'd built something sustainable, something ethical, something Dad would have been proud of. One morning, I walked through the executive floor early. A cleaner was mopping the hallway. A young woman I didn't recognize. "Good morning," I said. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, good morning, Ms. Walsh. What's your name?" "Angela. I just started last week." "How do you like it so far?" "It's good. People here are really nice, and the pay is better than my last cleaning job." "I'm glad to hear that. Angela, let me tell you something. Every person in this company matters, from the CEO to the cleaning staff. We're all building something together." She smiled. "Thank you. That means a lot." I continued to my office, thinking about the girl I'd been 3 years ago, mopping these same floors, invisible to nearly everyone. 4 years after the board meeting, Harrison officially retired. We held a celebration, honoring his 30 years with the company. "I built this company with my brother," Harrison said during his speech. "Thomas was the genius. I was the people person. When he died, I thought I had to prove I could do it alone. I was wrong. My niece, Thea, taught me something important. You don't build something great alone. You build it with people. People you respect. People you empower. People you treat with dignity." I didn't understand that for a long time. I thought leadership meant having all the answers. It actually means asking the right questions and listening to the answers. "Thea, thank you for saving me from myself, for saving this company, for honoring your father's vision. He would be so proud of you." I hugged my uncle. Our relationship finally healed after years of tension. "You're welcome, Uncle Harrison. Thank you for being willing to change." "I didn't have much choice," he laughed. "You owned 51%. You had the choice to leave. You stayed and did the work. That matters." After the party, I sat in my office, the same office where I'd cleaned windows for 8 months. I thought about Dad, about the plan he'd put in place when I was 18, the trust structure that protected my ownership, the faith he'd had that I'd eventually be ready. "I did it, Dad," I said to the empty office. "I saved what you built. I honored your values. I treated people the way you would have wanted." I felt his presence, or maybe just his philosophy, living in every decision I made. 5 years after the board meeting, I was 33 and running one of the most successful independent wealth management firms in Chicago. We'd been approached multiple times by larger firms wanting to acquire us. The offers were generous, worth hundreds of millions. "What do you think?" the board asked during one discussion. "I think acquisition would be financially smart and culturally devastating. We'd lose our independence, our values would be compromised, employees would become numbers in a larger corporation." "So we stay independent? We stay true to what we built. That's worth more than any acquisition price." The employee owners, who now controlled 25% of the company collectively, voted unanimously to remain independent. "We're building something special," one employee said. "Let's not sell it for quarterly earnings." That same year, I started a mentorship program. Young people from middle-class families, the kind of clients Dad had loved serving, received internships and financial education. "Why are you doing this?" one intern asked. "Because my father believed everyone deserves access to good financial advice, not just the wealthy. This program continues that belief." "Is it profitable?" Not directly, but it builds relationships with the next generation of clients. And it's the right thing to do. Sometimes that's reason enough. 6 years after the board meeting, Angela, the cleaner I'd met years earlier, approached me with an unusual request. "Ms. Walsh, I want to go back to school, get a degree in finance, maybe work my way up in the company." "That's a great goal. How can I help?" "The company has a tuition assistance program. I want to apply." "You're automatically approved. In fact, let's do more than that. If you commit to the finance degree, I'll guarantee you an analyst position when you graduate." "Really?" "Why?" "Because I started in this company as a cleaner too. I know what it's like to be invisible. If you're willing to do the work, you deserve the opportunity." 7 years after the board meeting, the company was thriving beyond anything Dad could have imagined. We managed $7.2 billion in assets, employed 280 people, and had become known industry-wide for ethical practices and employee development. The employee ownership plan had made dozens of people financially secure. Long-term employees had built significant equity value. "You've done something remarkable," the senior trustee told me during our annual review. "Your father set you up to succeed, but the execution has been all you." "Been the team. I just set the direction." "Don't be modest. You took a company that was profitable but toxic and transformed it into something both profitable and healthy. That's rare." Harrison, now fully retired and living in Florida, called occasionally to check in. "How's it going?" he'd ask. "We're on track for another record year." "Of course you are. You're better at this than I ever was. I learned from watching you, both what to do and what not to do." He laughed. "Fair. Hey, I've been thinking about writing a book about leadership mistakes, things I did wrong. People would read that. Would you write a chapter about taking over from a difficult predecessor? Only if I can call it What I Learned While Mopping Your Floor." He laughed harder. "Deal." 8 years after the board meeting, I decided to do something I'd been considering for years: go public with the full story. I gave an interview to a business publication explaining everything: the inheritance at 18, the analyst job and firing, the 8 months as a cleaner, the board meeting revelation. The article went viral. The CEO who mopped floors, how a secret heiress transformed her family's company, became one of the most read business stories of the year. The response was overwhelming. I received hundreds of messages from people who connected with the story. "I'm a cleaner," one wrote. "Thank you for showing that we matter." "I'm an executive," wrote another. "Your story made me rethink how I treat support staff." "I inherited a family business," wrote a third. "Your approach to balancing respect for the founder's vision with necessary change inspired me." I was invited to speak at business schools, leadership conferences, and management seminars. "What's the most important lesson from your experience?" one audience member asked. "That invisibility is educational. When you're invisible, people reveal who they really are. They show their values, their character, their true selves. That information is valuable for leaders." Would you recommend other executives work in lower-level positions? Absolutely. Not forever, but long enough to understand the company from the bottom up, to see what the people doing the actual work experience daily. What advice would you give to young people inheriting businesses? Don't rush. Take time to learn, build expertise, understand the business deeply before trying to lead it. And never forget that companies are made of people, not just balance sheets. 9 years after the board meeting, Angela graduated with her finance degree. True to my promise, I hired her as an analyst. "I can't believe I'm actually working in finance," she said on her first day. "5 years ago, I was mopping these floors." "So was I reminded her. "We're not that different." "You're the CEO. I'm an entry-level analyst." "You're an entry-level analyst who knows more about this company's culture than most executives. You've seen it from the bottom up. That perspective is valuable." 10 years after the board meeting, Meridian celebrated its 40th anniversary. The company Dad and Harrison had founded with $50,000, and a dream now managed $9.4 billion in assets. We held a gala, inviting clients, employees, and industry partners. Harrison flew in from Florida for the event. During the celebration, I gave a speech honoring Dad's vision. My father, Thomas Walsh, believed that financial advice should be a service, not a sales pitch, that clients deserve honesty, not commission-driven recommendations, that employees deserve respect, not fear-based management. For a while, we lost sight of those principles. We prioritized growth over culture, profit over people, short-term gains over long-term reputation. 10 years ago, I exercised my rights as majority owner to return this company to its founding values. It wasn't easy. Change never is, but it was necessary. Today, Meridian stands for everything my father believed in. We serve clients honestly. We treat employees with dignity. We build for the long term. This isn't just my company. It's not just Harrison's company. It's our company. Every employee who owns equity, every client who trusts us, every person who contributed to building this culture of excellence. Dad, I hope we've made you proud. The room erupted in applause. Harrison was crying. So was I. Later, Harrison and I stood on the venue's balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I'm sorry," he said, "for how I treated you, for losing sight of what your father built, for everything. I forgave you years ago. I know, but I needed to say it again. You changed, Uncle Harrison. You were willing to admit mistakes and do the work. That's what matters. Your father was lucky to have you as a daughter. I was lucky to have him as a father." 11 years after the board meeting, I decided to write my own book, not about business strategy, but about purpose. Finding meaning in work, lessons from mopping floors to managing millions, detailed my journey and the philosophy I'd developed, the core message: every job has dignity, every person matters. The best leaders are those who've experienced invisibility and choose to see others. The book became a bestseller, not because of business advice, but because of the human story. "You write about being invisible," one reviewer noted, "but your message makes invisible people visible. That's powerful." I donated all book proceeds to a scholarship fund for children of service workers, cleaners, maintenance staff, security guards, people who keep companies running but are rarely acknowledged. My father believed everyone deserved opportunities, I told the scholarship recipients at the first award ceremony. This fund continues that belief. 12 years after the board meeting, I was 39 and contemplating succession planning. I had no children. The company needed a long-term plan. "Have you thought about who takes over when you're ready to step back?" the board asked. "I have. I think we should promote from within, someone who understands the culture we've built." "Any candidates in mind?" "Angela, the former cleaner who's now a senior analyst. She understands this company from the bottom up. She embodies our values, and she's brilliant." "She's only 27. I was 27 when I took over. Age isn't the question. Capability is." "What if she's not ready for 5 or 10 years?" "Then we develop her until she is. That's what mentorship means." 13 years after the board meeting, Angela was promoted to VP of Client Services. She was being groomed for the CEO role, though she didn't know it yet. "Why are you investing so much in my development?" she asked during a mentorship session. "Because I see in you what my father saw in me. Capability, ethics, commitment to serving people rather than extracting from them." That's a lot of pressure. It's also a lot of opportunity. "Angela, you could run this company someday, if you want to." "Run Meridian? Me? Why not? You understand our culture. You've lived it from the bottom up. You care about people. Those are the qualities that matter." "I don't have an MBA. Neither did my father. He had integrity and intelligence. So do you." 14 years after the board meeting, Harrison passed away. He was 72, died peacefully in his sleep after a full life. At his funeral, I gave the eulogy. Harrison Walsh was a complicated man. He was charming and difficult, brilliant and stubborn, capable of great vision and great blindness. My father's death devastated Harrison. He spent years trying to prove he could build something without his brother. In doing so, he lost sight of what his brother had taught him. But Harrison was also capable of change. When confronted with his mistakes, he didn't run. He stayed. He listened. He grew. That's rare and admirable. The last 14 years of Harrison's life, he worked to rebuild what he'd damaged, to return to the values he'd lost, to become the partner my father had believed he could be. He succeeded, not perfectly, but genuinely, and in the end, that's what matters. Not that we never make mistakes, but that we're willing to acknowledge and correct them. Rest in peace, Uncle Harrison. You redeemed yourself. 15 years after the board meeting, I stood in the executive office, looking out at Chicago's skyline, the same view I'd had while mopping windows years ago. I thought about Dad, about the trust he'd placed in an 18-year-old girl, about the company he'd built and the values he'd instilled. I thought about Harrison, about the difficult journey from arrogant CEO to humble partner, about redemption and growth. I thought about the 280 employees who owned pieces of the company, who built it daily with their expertise and effort. And I thought about Angela, the cleaner who'd become a VP, who would one day run Meridian just as I had. You did it, Dad, I said to the city beyond the glass. You set up a structure that protected the company. That gave me the authority to guide it. That allowed us to return to what you'd built. I worked as a cleaner in Uncle Harrison's firm. He didn't know I owned 51%, but more importantly, he didn't know I was watching, learning, documenting, preparing. That invisibility taught me what leadership really means, not power over people, but service to them, not extracting value, but creating it, not demanding respect, but earning it through dignity given to others. My phone buzzed. Angela. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. You ready? Ready. What's on the agenda? Succession planning, and a proposal I want to run past you. What kind of proposal? I'll explain in the meeting, but Thea, thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing in me when I was just a cleaner, for giving me opportunities I never imagined possible. You earned those opportunities, Angela. I just opened doors. You walked through them. I grabbed my portfolio and headed to the boardroom, the same boardroom where 15 years ago I'd revealed my ownership to a shocked uncle who'd ignored me while I mopped his floors. The cleaner had become the CEO, the invisible had become the leader, and the company Dad built had become something even better than he'd imagined. That was the legacy. Not the money, not the growth metrics, but the proof that invisibility teaches, humility strengthens, and the best leaders are those who remember what it's like to be unseen. If only Uncle Harrison had known, all those mornings while I mopped his floor, that the help would one day save the company he thought he owned. If only he'd realized that the invisible are watching, learning, preparing to make everything visible when the moment is right, but he didn't know, and that ignorance taught me everything I needed to learn about leadership, humility, and the power of being underestimated. The cleaner saw what the CEO missed, and that vision saved everything.